John Dewey, one of the greatest American educational philosophers, has said that education is the process of remaking experience, giving it a more socialized value through increased individual experience by giving the individual better control over his own powers. At a later stage of his life, Dewey developed the theory that education was life itself. So, to the question, what has life taught you? I would say everything. But I choose three lessons I have learned from my life for the talk this evening. Firstly, there is no substitute for hard work for success in life. Secondly, I learned during my early years of my life to get into my stride without fussing in any situation. Thirdly, I learned the importance and absolute necessity of avoiding flatterers and sycophants as far as possible. To achieve one's object in life, one has to develop capacity for hard work. This is a lesson which I was forced to learn throughout my adolescent stage by circumstances in which I was placed. I belonged to a poor agricultural family in a village in the Belgaum district and was stranded after finishing my primary education in my village and middle school education at Gokak. The nearest town which had a government secondary school then was Belgaum, but the cost of continuing my education there was prohibitive. Nor were there any government scholarships for poor students in those days as at present. A friend, however, suggested to me that I might join the government high school at Kolhapur, where the Maharaja had started hostels for almost all communities and where there was provision for free board and lodging for 2 or 3 poor pupils on the basis of merit. In addition, there were open state scholarships in each class for the first 4 pupils in the government high school. The suggestion of my friend filled me with great enthusiasm. But the only snag was that I didn't know Marathi, the local language of Kolhapur. I thought, however, that I would learn the new language in about 6 months' time and be able to compete with the local boys by winning a scholarship. That was the height of my self-confidence, but I saw no alternative to continue my secondary education. The school authorities tested me before admitting and were apparently satisfied with my performance, for they not only gave me admission in the prestigious government high school, but also put me in A division, which was reserved for potential scholars likely to obtain more than 60% marks throughout in all the examinations, terminal and annual. Our textbooks were all in English, and I was allowed to take an additional paper in English in lieu of Marathi, as provided by the Bombay University, which then controlled the syllabuses of high schools. This solved my problem partially, for I could avoid Marathi as an examination subject, but the problem persisted as to how I was going to follow the classroom work, which went on through Marathi for the most part. Actually, I wasted my time in the class as I didn't understand Marathi well enough to follow what was being taught, particularly in history, geography, and science. I had read books on these subjects by myself. Occasionally, I consulted some senior students in the hostel who knew both Marathi and Kannada. It was a unique experiment in education. One of the educational principles is that all education is self-education. By force of circumstances, I was following that principle without knowing that it had the sanction of the best educational authorities. The first term ended in the middle of October, and we broke up for Diwali vacation after the terminal examination. Imagine my joy when a few days later, during the vacation, I received a letter from the headmaster informing me of my marks and the rank and congratulating me on my winning a scholarship by standing third amongst all pupils of the 5th standard of the Rajaram High School. I was terribly excited, for the news filled me with an enormous amount of self-confidence. To win this miserable scholarship of rupees 5 per month, I must have worked at least for about 7 hours outside school, getting up at 3 a.m. to mug up rules of Sanskrit grammar and to learn by heart prescribed Sanskrit verses. Later on, I continued to stand first or second throughout my high school career, again by hard work. The same habit I continued throughout my college career from 1919-23. By the time I passed my matriculation examination in 1919, the Karnataka College had already been started at Dharwad. So I left Kolhapur and joined the Karnataka College where there was less competition. It was easy for me to win merit scholarships there as I was always first in the college. I was awarded a government scholarship of rupees 10 per month by the college, and from the Sirsangi scholarship I got another rupees 15 per month. I was not only self-supporting but was also quite comfortable according to the cost of living then. Now I was imbued with the ambition of standing first in the whole of Bombay University, whose jurisdiction extended from Dharwad to Karachi. Then I began to work hard again with renewed vigor and eventually realized my ambition by burning midnight oil. I obtained first class first at the BA Mathematics Honours Examination of 1923 of the Bombay University. This enabled me to win a scholarship of rupees 400 per month from the Sirsangi Trust and to proceed to Cambridge to take mathematics tripos. There also I had an easy first class. On my return to India, I was appointed Professor of Mathematics at the Benares Hindu University. This was in my line and I loved it. But the climate of Benares was one of extremes, and I was looking for an opening in the education department of the former Bombay state in the hope that I would be posted in the Deccan College, Pune. In the meantime, the education department of the Bombay government was on the lookout for a well-qualified educationist for its administrative cadre in the Indian Education Service, and I was appointed to it in 1930 as Educational Inspector of the Bombay Division. I had to control several district and municipal school boards which were run under the separate acts, and I had to inspect about 100 secondary schools, including a few government high schools. So I had to learn the tricks of a new trade. In addition to inspection work, staffing of a large number of government schools and training institutions was my responsibility. So my first 2 years of probation under the Bombay government required me to work very hard. Even after my confirmation, I tried to keep myself abreast of modern educational developments in all advanced countries. After I was transferred to the office of the DPR, I kept up my habit of reading all the files carefully and being fair to all the parties, educational institutions and subordinate officers. Hard work coupled with the understanding of all problems of education department from pre-primary to the university level made me a successful DPI of the former Bombay state for 8 years and Vice Chancellor of the Karnataka University for 13 years and further later on Governor of Punjab for 6 years. Another important lesson I learnt in my early life was to get into my stride without fussing in any situation. In other words, I learned the value of taking things as they come. Early in life, I had one and only one ambition in life, and that was to be a successful lawyer. My plan was to make sufficient money and then get into politics. I had the ideals of leaders like Motilal Nehru, Sir Tej Bahadur Sapru and C.R. Das before me. Actually, the belief then was that only the able and successful lawyers would be in a position to enter politics. The circumstances, however, forced me to look for a career in the education department. There again, I wanted only to be a professor of mathematics, but circumstances forced me to take an administrative appointment in the education department. But I had to make the best of a troublesome job entailing very hard work. The third important lesson I learned when I was still a student at Cambridge was to avoid flatterers and sycophants as far as possible. We should realize that we are never as great as such people try to make us out in our presence. They know the art of pleasing you when you have something to give them, but talk ill of you behind your back. During my long career of educational administration, and even as Governor of Punjab, I had several opportunities of dealing with such kind of flatterers. Whenever I heard undeserved complimentary remarks about me or my administration, I generally smelt a rat. To make them come to the point about which they wanted to see me, I confronted them with an embarrassing question: how much money do you need from me? Then I used to tell them the story as to how it emanated from my early life at Cambridge. I had a queer friend in my college hostel at Cambridge. He belonged to a rich Khoja Muslim family of Bombay and was perhaps the most popular person in our college, for he had a sharp tongue and pleasing personality. He was doing law. His only defect was that he was in the habit of spending much more than the annual allowance his father had sanctioned for him. In those days, education in Oxford or Cambridge used to cost Indian students roughly about £350 per annum, or about rupees 400 per month. I had a Sessangi scholarship of rupees 400 per month and had also won a college scholarship of £60 per annum. So I was relatively well off among the 5 or 6 Indian students in the college and could afford to spend my holidays during the vacations either in a British seaside place or on the continent. This made my friend think that I was financially well-to-do and could advance him money as and when he needed it. So his modus operandi for the purpose was to flatter me about my scholarship, about the way I was conducting myself, and even about my dress before coming to the point. His flattery was more distressing to me than parting with money, which might or might not come back. His visits to me became more frequent as he used to be in straitened circumstances for the most part of the year. To avoid hearing his unnecessary compliments, I used to ask him straight away, whenever he saw me in my room, "Well, how much money do you need this time from me?"